Okay, so that was one attempt I made at turning a piece by the avant-garde German composer Helmut Lachenmann called Pression into a found sound beat of the kind that Andrew Huang does so well.
Next we're going to make a clap sound, and we do that by slightly lowering the pitch of the sniff, and then we'll shorten it again, but this time we'll use the end instead of the beginning.
So the main motivation for making my beats was to learn a bit more about the Ableton Live software, but I found in the process that I started delving more into Lachenmann's music and this particular piece. So I thought I'd share both something about the beats I'd created, but also what I'd understood about this quite challenging Lachenmann piece. Pression's a short piece for solo cello consisting of basically pops, squeaks, scrapes and grinds, but it turns out to be quite an appropriate choice for my project. I think Andrew and Helmut actually have more in common than you might realise, because they're both really dealing with found sounds. Andrew takes everyday noises, the sound of water, a racing car or a sniff, and he makes beats out of them. And Lachenmann calls his pieces an instrumental version of musique concrète, which was this kind of found sound electronic music from the 1940s, where it didn't matter where the sound came from. It might be a car horn or a washing machine. The sound was explored for its own properties. But there's an important difference between Andrew and Helmut when it comes to entertainment. Where Andrew's videos are endlessly entertaining, Helmut firmly disapproves of the idea that art should be entertaining. In Switzerland, people pay €500 just to make bungee jumping. They want to have this feeling of pushing the limit, but in the concert hall they're sitting in the royal bathtub, so I must put a little bit of cold water in the bathtub into the concert hall. So there's definitely a deliberate act of provocation in this piece. He's banishing any traditional ways of playing the instrument, as well as any traditional sense of harmony or rhythm. You can see that most clearly in the notation which Lachenmann created specially for this piece, and it's a system which has been imitated by many composers since. It's not a graphic score, it's actually more like an advanced form of tablature. It shows the neck and body of the instrument as viewed from the cellist's point of view. The upper part shows what the bow hand does, and the lower part shows the left hand on the fingerboard. Because most of the piece doesn't have precise notes or rhythms, it's laid out spatially with an approximate tempo given. So let's decode the opening section. It tells us to rest our fingertips loosely on the string in the way that you would when you create a natural harmonic. The left hand then follows this shape. And at this point the bow stops, but the fingers carry on and turn into thumbnails scraping the string. Here you see a crescendo which the left hand is supposed to do by accelerating the speed it scrapes the string. So I'm sure many of you are hearing this and thinking, okay, whatever. But let's just take it seriously for a moment. How are we supposed to listen to a piece like this? Well, I have to say that working on my beat really gave me a way to start getting into it. The first thing I did was to separate out all the individual sounds he uses. And you start becoming aware of the similarities between the different sounds. You've got a lot of short, poppy, clicky sounds. You've got some rustling, shuffling kinds of sounds. You've got some bouncing sounds. And you've got a couple of sustained sounds. This was really fun in itself, and I'm definitely thinking more about whether I can use these kind of sounds in a forthcoming string quartet I'll be writing. So just enjoying the sounds, however silly or weird they often are, is definitely the first step to absorbing the piece. But it's still quite hard to understand if there's any reason why one sound follows another, or why the piece has the overall shape it does. And to be honest, Lachenmann can be a bit contradictory about this. In one interview he talks about how he doesn't think about form at all.
Ich denke nie über Form nach. Ich will was zeigen und dann...
Aber es hat eine Form.
Es kriegt eine Form.
Es sind ja Teile, es gibt eine Reprise, es gibt diese zwei...
Aber jeder Tag, den ich begehe, hat eine Form. Ohne dass ich überlege, was er für eine Form hat. Ja.
And then later in the same interview he's talking about building contrast or continuities between different sections of the piece. So isn't that really a way of dealing with form? The question I often have with this kind of piece is, how do I make a value judgment as to whether it's a successful form or not? I'm not totally sure I've found the answer to that one. I think I made a bit of progress by watching two different performances of the piece. I found two performances which are both extremely high quality but so different in their approach. One of them lasts 7 minutes and the other lasts 12 minutes. In the first, by Eric Maria Couturier, the thing that strikes you the most is the extraordinary hunched over position he chooses to play. And it does seem that a lot of the piece is supposed to be about the way the body of the cellist interacts with the instrument. One cellist calls it a sort of ballet that the performer does, moving around and floating over the instrument. So Couturier certainly scores very highly on that front. You feel like there's some kind of deep, almost slightly perverted act going on. But the intensity of the performance certainly makes it very watchable. The other version by David Stromberg was much more restrained in the way he played. But this was the 7-minute version, and what was interesting was things joined together more, and you got more of a sense of line, ideas, echoing and pre-echoing, contrasting or continuing. There was more of a sort of journey through the piece, which I personally found helpful. So to create the beats was actually easier than I expected. First I loaded up all the clips into a drum rack so I could play them all across the keyboard. I was trying to make this beat a bit growlier, so I started with this gruff sound which had its own rhythm, and I set a click track to that tempo. I then gradually layered up sounds on top of that. I played the pitched sol ponticello kind of sound on a sampler so I could create a little tune. And finally I did some pitch shifting on a pizzicato to turn it into a bass drum. And took a short extract of a scraping sound to create a snare, turned up the volume, and the beat was complete. So I definitely found this a very enjoyable session, and I would recommend that if you ever find yourself struggling to find a connection with a challenging piece of contemporary music, load it up into your DAW of choice, and I guarantee that you'll end the session knowing, understanding and appreciating the piece a whole lot better. Thanks so much for watching. Do please like and subscribe and share with your friends. And if you really enjoy the channel, do consider supporting it over at Patreon. And I'll see you next time.